You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Engle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Hello, everybody. Keith Engle for TGI Sports Talk, live tonight, not only on TGI Sports Talk, but Northeast Streaming Sports, both on Facebook and YouTube. Go over to YouTube, subscribe to Northeast Streaming Sports. We're starting to grow. We're growing on Facebook. We're growing faster on YouTube. Don't be left out. I want to say hi to my co-host tonight, McGrath from the Mac and Jack Sports Show, who's also a contributor tonight.
Hey, how you doing today, Keith?
Jack, I am Jack. Wow.
Yes. That's the other co-host. We look a lot alike, Keith, so, don't worry.
I just lost my co-host. Mac, I am doing great. How are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. I'm looking forward to the show, Keith, getting ready for some Big East tournament, and let's, talk about what's going to happen upcoming. It's going to be very interesting, especially, Keith, with a lot of things that happen with players and coaches at the end of the year here.
Yeah, it's been an interesting finish to the season in the Big East for sure. I get excited for all the conference tournaments myself, and we'll even dive in tonight not only about this year's Big East tournament, but we'll talk about what it was like in the past with Matt Brust later on from St. John's University.
Yes, sir.
He played in the Big East when the Big East was the Big East.
Old Big East, Keith, the old Big East.
The monster. So.
Yes.
Lots going on, though. I mean, the prohibitive favorite, Villanova's got a lot of injuries. I mean, they've been dominating this tournament for the last, they won the last 3, I think, and 4 of the last 5. But there's going to be some competition, I think, this year. And with the injuries Villanova has right now to Gillespie and now Moore, not sure his status. Maybe Jamie, the Philly sports guy, will have some more information on that. I don't know. But it seemed like it might have been a pretty serious ankle injury. They could be vulnerable here. They don't play till Thursday, I think. But I don't know what your thoughts are there, but it's certainly wide open, I think.
Well, listen, I think even before the injury to Gillespie, that they were going to be very much competed against with some of the other teams this year. And of course, it's going to affect them in NCAA, in the seedings. And we'll see what happens when that all comes up, Keith, after the tournament. But of course, you got the automatic bid being the winner of the Big East itself. So I don't know how it's going to affect them in the long run. But even with Gillespie, I think that there are a few teams that might have been able to beat them anyway, Keith.
Yeah, I agree. And, right now there's probably 3 teams that are in no matter what happens. There is an automatic bid, as you mentioned. Villanova should be in, Creighton should be in, and UConn has played their way in now, I think, no matter what they do. But this tournament is very important to Seton Hall, very important to St. John's, and that's probably all that's going to have a shot, but very important.
Yeah. Xavier. I think Xavier too still has a shot, Keith. I mean, a small shot, but a shot. I mean, I think you're right, though. I think you've got 3, maybe 4 that will make it into the NCAA, depending how they play in the tournament here too. But, I think Villanova is set like at 11 right now, last time I checked. And I think Creighton is like at 17. I think it's close. If I'm not exact, I'm close. But I think that was before Gillespie got hurt. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, interestingly enough, that I was looking at Joe Lunardi's bracketology. He still got Xavier as one of the last 4 teams in, which I'm surprised at. I think they got to get to the final at least to have a chance at an at-large. But, that's why we play the games. So it's going to be an exciting weekend starting tomorrow. 3 games tomorrow, obviously, kind of play-in games, I guess, if you want to look at them that way. It'll be the lower seeds trying to get in to get their chance at the big boys. The DePauls of the world are not going to have a shot in this tournament. It's going to be, as I say, it's wide open, but I think it's 5 or 6 teams. That's wide open to me. So,
yeah, I think if you look at the brackets too, Keith, if you look at them real quick, all right, you got the bracket that Xavier and UConn are in. I think is a little bit more tougher than the one right now that St. John is in. So I think St. John has a path to get to that championship game a little bit easier unless if they weren't in a UConn bracket, I don't know if they would have a chance. But where they're at right now, and with Villanova being hurt, Creighton, having outside influences on them, St. John's has a good shot. I think a good shot at maybe making the championship.
Yeah, I would get, if Gillespie was healthy, St. John's was going to have trouble with Villanova, no matter how well they were playing, as we saw a couple of weeks ago when they got blown out. But they did beat them once, and now without their point guard, that pressured defense is going to be even harder for Villanova to deal with. So we'll see. Why don't we, since we got Pags in the room, and I know he's got to do his show tonight too, let's get him in the room and we'll talk about Villanova a little bit. Let me get this one out of here. Bring Pags in. Hello, Pags. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, guys. How about yourself?
We are awesome. How's the excitement in Philadelphia for the Big East tournament?
There's some apprehension. It's been a little bit tough yet with the injuries that have been killing them. But I mean, how can you fault the coach? You know what I mean? The coach is like he's the one thing that they really do have going for them, and along with the fact that Robinson Earl did make, he was the I think they got unanimous decision for first team. They're going to really go as far as he goes completely. But the injuries really are hurting them, and it's a shame because Gillespie was actually having a great year. Yeah, and I think Moore is going to play. I think he's going to try. He may not play on Thursday, and I don't think that's going to matter. I think that Villanova will get past them, even with a really shortened bench. But I think that you're right, St. John's or Seton Hall. I think either one of them is going to give them a really tough run with the short bench. I just don't know that they have I think the last one that they would have is like Brian Antoine, and I don't know that he's got enough ability, you know what I mean, to be able to compete. Plus, he hasn't played a lot of minutes, so it's like that's a lot to ask for somebody just coming off the bench and saying, "Hey, you're going to be the guy now," because we're out of guys. You know what I mean? But Coach Wright is the guy that I would trust in that situation better than anybody else, and he's going to put his guys in position. I wouldn't even be surprised to see them, because I thought that the biggest challenge that they were going to face was how their bench was going to react, and that leaves it up to Swider and Slater. Yeah. And I kind of think that both of them are the keys to them four-peating, in this tournament. If these guys can come out, and they're juniors, so they're seasoned now, and I think that they're both ready to go to the challenge. And my thought would be is that they would actually go do like a 1-4, one guard and four forwards, just because they need the scoring power out there.
They might. Go ahead.
Yeah, if Moore can't play.
Yeah. You mentioned the key to me. I mean, Jay Wright obviously is the longest tenured coach in the Big East since he's been there 20 years, I think now, right?
Exactly.
And he's had all kinds of offers to leave. I mean, and I want to touch on that quickly. He's turned down big offers from the Sixers, from the Knicks. Is he a lifer at Villanova? Is he ever going to leave?
I think that he would say he was always going to leave the door open for a possibility, but I can't see him going anywhere else. Why would he? You know what I mean? Like when I think of certain college coaches and how well they have done, and when they've tried to move on and how that hasn't quite worked. I think that the game, the professional game, is so much different from college, and where he is best at is talking to recruits and recruiting young kids and teaching them the way to play basketball. It's amazing. Like Villanova was never really known as a great school, and even though they've won a couple of national championships, that it still hasn't been like a national name. But the guys that leave Villanova to go to the NBA have longevity, and that's because of coaching. I feel like that's being taught the right way to play, as Larry Brown would say.
Well, if there's a good thing for you, if there's a good thing that comes out of this injury, is that you don't have to play right away, Pags, right? I mean, you got that extra time to work the team together, to try to put something together. If they weren't number one, say they were down number 8 or 7, and this happened, and you lost your main guy and you had to play right away, that would have really put you all in a very bad position. I don't know how well you guys are going to do making it through this bracket and getting to the end, but at least you still got that, that bye where you guys can work the team out together without Gillespie and maybe more there, whether he plays or not. But at least you're going to have that extra time with him.
Well, that whole one day makes a big difference, I guess. But truth of the matter is that playing the 8th or 9th seed, just those guys that are going to be, I don't think Georgetown would have a chance, even with, like I said, their short bench. And I think Georgetown wins that game. My expectation is that because this tournament happens, bam, 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 bam. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's not going to be any rest for the weary. So they're going to have to play their deep bench in some of this game. My expectation is that you're going to see guys that have been on the court on Friday that you haven't ever seen on the court, just because he's going to want to rest his guys for Saturday and Sunday, because he knows that they're going to be playing the entire games, that there's going to be very little substitution.
It's funny you bring up, one of the things I like about the conference tournaments is that bang, 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 right? You got to play every night, and you got to play well, depending on the size of the conference, 3, 4, 5 nights in a row. And not really 5 nights, right? But I don't like these leagues like the A10, where they play their whole tournament this weekend, and next weekend is the championship game. I just don't like that format. And there's quite a few of the mid majors that do that.
Yeah, and you know what? To each their own. I guess they do it. It's all about the dollar. So those bigger. Tournaments are more about the money than it really is about the games. And that's why you see certain teams not even go. If they've got an automatic seed into the tournament, they don't care to win, because they know why do start preparing for the tournament. It's actually behooves them to actually start preparing that way rather than to play a championship game. And that's why you see some, upsets, so to speak, from lower teams in those conferences, because those guys are already in. Why do they care?
Yeah.
If you're going to get a 2 or 3 or 4 seed, do you think it's going to make a difference if you win the tournament? Probably not.
It's one of the things. That's one of the downsides of the tournaments too, is because you play all season, and this season's a little bit different. Obviously, I would have this year made it the regular season champion get the automatic bid in my mind, just because of the iffiness of the COVID and getting through these conference championships. And I don't like that circumstance that you just mentioned, Pags, either. Jack, Jack. I saw Jack say hello, by the way. He's over your shoulder, Mac.
He's always over my shoulder. Listen, I think that what Pags just brought up is an important point that again, the NCAA should look at, right? If you're going to have a tournament, you want the teams playing in the tournament. There should be some kind of mandatory clause. I don't care about the money. I don't care about what they're doing, that every team plays in that tournament. If you're not going to play in a tournament, they shouldn't give them a bid in the NCAA tournament itself. That would fix that right away. Listen, I don't care how good your bigger university is. It's all supposed to be the same rules. And again, here's the NCAA letting different divisions, different schools do different things. And to me, that's a huge advantage to people that don't play in the tournaments. If they may not get injured. They may whatever could happen during that tournament that they should be playing in for their conference, that should be mandatory. I think that's something the NCAA should look at.
Heck, a lot of these teams get buys into the semifinals. Gonzaga doesn't play till the semifinals of their conference. So it's hard.
Well, and that's because they have so many teams now that are involved in this. Those are mini tournaments now at this point. And that ultimately, if you win your conference, should you have to play all those games to get in, to get it close to the finals? I don't think you should, because you've played all your games already to that point. And that's the way. And I think that conference specifically, where they have them in the semis, is a way of getting around that, to get them to say, hey, we still want you to play. We want you to be able to put your guys out there. You obviously earned the shot to be as high ranked as you are. That's the way that you're going to be able. We're going to be able to ensure that you put your best team out on the court, rather than Yeah, I don't care.
You know,
Yes.
Pags, I disagree with you. Listen, the rules should be the same for everybody. I don't care. I don't care what we want to do for these other teams to make sure they're best teams on the court. The rules should be the same. This is college basketball. This is not professional. This is where it should be fair as possible for teams to have to play a tournament if they have one. If they don't, then get rid of the damn tournament. Take whatever tournament they have there, get rid of it, and just seed them that way. If they're not going to do what every other conference does, then either don't let them go in a tournament or get rid of the tournament. It's ridiculous to me.
Well, you see, I would almost agree with that, except for the fact that now you have kids that are getting to make decisions where they don't want to play in the tournament. They feel like that they've already got their spot in the draft in the NBA, and why risk a tournament to get hurt or to do whatever? So now you've got a college who has done really well in the regular season, and now one of their star players decides that they want to opt out of the tournament because they want to make sure that why bother going into the tournament? My stock's already way high. I'm going to be a top 5 or a top 10 pick in the NBA, and I'm going to get paid. Why would I risk getting hurt? Why would I risk losing status to somebody who's up and coming? And because you always have these tournament stars that show up out of nowhere, especially in college. That's what makes this tournament so great. But to just be able to say, yeah, we need to make a blanket for everybody. I mean, I think that's why you're supposed to play in the regular season. That's why it's a big deal when the 15 seed beats the 2 seed. So that because ultimately it's not supposed to happen because the best teams are always supposed to win. And if they earn their spot to get further along, I agree with that. But I understand where your point is coming from. But because there's too much say by the players themselves and not the teams and the schools, that's why I say that I feel like they'd have to do it this way.
I think you're going to see a change in the one and done rule here very soon because it's not work. First of all, it's not working for these schools anymore. Duke and North Carolina, they all went the Kentucky route the last few years. It hasn't worked out for them. And I think you're going to start seeing a little reversal if the rule doesn't change. The NBA is talking about changing the rule where you can come out after high school, but if you go to college, you cannot come in until your class has been in school 3 years in college.
Right.
That's a bad idea too. I think do what they need to do and pay them.
No,
pay these guys.
No, Pags. No. I mean, they're going to get paid. If they're good enough, they're going to get paid. Listen, Pags, please. That waters down the game. The heck with the individual for any individual anymore. They do this in football. Football says you got to play 3 years. That's the way it is. You don't want to play 3 years, you're not eligible. Or you're going to wait the 3 years. Don't play then. Don't play college. Wait for 3 years and go in. This is wrong. It's watering down the sport of college basketball. It's not even watchable sometimes.
So they'd still be able to come out. They'd have to if they could come. They could come out after their senior year in high school.
Right. But I'm saying then don't play. Don't play. If you're that good, you don't have to worry about it. Right? You're going to get paid.
That'd be good for the G League and the NBA actually because you get a lot of really good players in the G League, right?
Yeah, right. And let's make another rule to make the situation worse than it is already. Pags, I understand what you're saying. Listen, everybody wants to be a superstar. That's beautiful. Everybody wants to get paid, right? Isn't that right? Well, that's great. Well, listen, you're watering down the sport.
I want to get paid.
Me too. But anyway, I Pags, you know how I am, man. It's got to be the sport first, my friend. Got to be the sport first.
Well, and listen, you're not getting argument from me in that respect. I hear what you're saying. So, but I also believe that if you're going to want these guys, and I'm not saying for the colleges to pay them, I'm talking about to allow them to get endorsements, allow them to make some subsidy by staying in school. And I think that's the only way, or else now all of a sudden you're going to start seeing all these high school kids come, and not go to college. And ultimately that's going to cause a really big problem. I mean, it started to happen a lot. Like after Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett came in, they both came out of high school. The following year, there was like 4 high school students that came out, and all 4 of them couldn't last for like 2 seasons. They just rode the bench throughout ever because when you're a first round pick, It's like gold in the NBA. You never go away. You're always able to stay somewhere on the bench, even if it's the 12th guy. 10 years from now. So you're going to start seeing that a lot, because it wasn't until King James came out, and they specifically changed the rule right after him, because they knew he was coming, even when all this was going down. But they saw him coming out, and they said, okay, after him, that's it. We're going to have them at least go 1 year of school to get them a little bit more maturity, and make these teams have to wait at least a year. I like the idea of having them wait 2 years. You have to go freshman and sophomore year and allow them to get endorsements, so that if they want to stay for their junior and senior year, where it's more they don't have to worry about taking care of their families. You know what I mean? That's what I think it's more about the dollar, and they're being trained about the dollar even from college. So if you gave them the opportunity to earn some, you'd start to see more and more of these players that are good players not go into the draft to become a second round pick.
I actually want to bring in, since we're on this topic, and Matt Brust, former standout for St. John's back in the mid-'80s, is going to join us. Now, Matt's actually a little bit early, but since he's here, he's an hour early. But since he's here, let's get his opinion on this topic. I want to hear from a player. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Matt Brust. How are you? We got no volume there, Matt. Maybe I can unmute him.
I got you. I'm sorry about that. It's good to be here. And hello to everybody. I was alarmed that I was off by an hour, but
that's all right. We'll
willing, but sometimes it's not all there.
We're having a little conversation about the one and dones, and whether the NBA should put a rule in where they're talking about putting a rule in where if you can come out after your senior year in college, but if you go to a college, you got to stay there 3 years. What, from a player's perspective, what do you think about that? I guess from your playing days, or even the way the world is today, which is a little different, obviously.
Yeah, when I had played, and we had talked on the last show, I originally was at North Carolina, and I remember Coach Smith had many discussions with Michael Jordan, and he was the second player, I believe, behind James Worthy to come out early. And there was a lot of trepidation there, even for him. I believe that he was concerned about not so much the injury factor, but all the things that college had to offer. I guess where I'm going here is, yes, that if you're offered the big money and all that stuff, it's wonderful, but there are too many young players that I've seen without an education or without mentorship go in at a young age and not get hurt, but if they do happen to make it, which is extremely rare, they would end up blowing all the money, and their lives would just be a mess. It's kind of too much too soon. It's as if you're sending your 16-year-old daughter off to college. It's not a good idea. I've never been a big fan of it. I've watched. There was a player at St. John's in the early 2000s. He was one of the up and coming star guards, and if the guy would have, was given him more of a chance to play, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years. His name was Omar Cook. He played a year at St. John's and went hardship, got somebody chirping in his ear, and young people are easily manipulated, and he's gone. And it was a terrible thing to watch. And I think the statistics, honestly, are so overwhelming. And I think we have to remember, for every kid that ends up making it, there's, what is it, one in 100,000, or one in 10,000, or if you just take all of college athletics, 1 in 500 that are going to be in that slot. The odds are just not there. So how football does it is interesting. In order to play professional football, you have to be there 3 years, and I believe that's just for the physicality of it. And the game has changed so much so. Even though I had a brief stint with Chicago, I was fully built when I went in there, and I needed every bit of my structure to go against these guys. So if we're talking about injuries, I mean, there's guaranteed contracts, but I know many guys who've have had guaranteed contracts. Just the air was sucked out of them as soon as they got hurt. And you've got a lot of years to live, and if they don't know how to function beyond being 18 and being in the first round, which is, only a certain number of picks, and the second round, I mean, that leaves a lot of people out in the cold.
It's funny. I had Tony Bruin on my show, ex-Syracuse star, which I'm sure you know the name, Matt, for the New York City area. And one of the things he brought up was he expected this point in his life to be playing on the money he made in the NBA. But he got drafted by the Sixers, but it didn't pan out. He made some money playing in Europe, but the money's long gone just because he didn't learn he didn't have the aptitude to learn what to do with that money to make it last. So,
and well, that's precisely my point. And to add further to that, then the guys, if they don't make it, they end up playing in places that they never dreamed of. They're not mature enough to even understand the situations that they're in, and it's excruciatingly destructive, and it's painful to watch. Fortunately, I've been on the inside of the game on the college level, and again, a little bit on the pro level. And man, I'll tell you, I see guys at reunions, and they're still talking about, if I would have stayed another year, if I would have listened to coach, and it's hard to tell a kid if they're being shown the money. You got to go. I mean, I will say that, but there's got to be some kind of mentorship, either that the NBA provides for those few individuals. As for the rest of us, I just don't think it's fair to create such high expectations. I mean, look, we're in a culture here that shows the end product. When LeBron James came into the league, they didn't show where he came from. I mean, the guy was absolutely phenomenal and incredible body and all that. But, when Michael came to North Carolina, he was 6'6" and maybe weighed 200 pounds. And could you see him going up against the Detroit Pistons of old? I mean, talk about broken bones and everything like that. And in those days, here's the superstar of superstars. This is the most perfect athlete you'll ever see, with all the desire and heart and God-given gifts. But my goodness, if he would have got hurt, and I think his last year, his salary was $25 million when Jerry Reinsdorf brought him back for one more year. So, these guys live such high lifestyles. They don't know any better. It's not their fault. So I really, I'm not a big fan. I've just seen too many train wrecks with guys, and I've seen lives destroyed because you've got the scouts hanging around. I mean, in the days with Coach Garnasek, I mean, he'd be outside the locker room with a broom handle, for God's sake.
Hey, Matt, I got a couple questions for you on that. Now, you're talking about the individuals, and I was talking to Pags about this. The game itself, the NCAA basketball game itself, gets watered down when you have these teams such as Kentucky that are not coaching kids anymore. They're just like a stop for them, right? They go to Kentucky and they're going right to the pros. The head coach of Kentucky isn't coaching anymore. He's just kind of keeping them for 1 year, showing them off and sending them to the pros. And I think that's why Kentucky is having a lot of problems now. The one and done isn't working for college basketball right now. No. You see teams the lower teams that have players under 3-4 years are the ones that are winning the games now, of course, because they got the chemistry. They're more mature. They're more experienced. And they're going to go up against these kids that are all freshmen that don't have any of that. So this is why I think that either the NBA or the NCAA should step in and say, listen, you're going to be here 3 years. And if you don't want to play, that's up to you. When your senior class is eligible, then you're eligible to go for the draft. There are a few circumstances, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, those guys are freaks of nature. I mean, that's 1 in a million or 1 in a billion, right? So, but these other players that come out like in Kentucky, like at Duke now. And this is why the programs are failing, because they don't have any kind of chemistry or any kind of experience with the team anymore. So, and I don't know why the head coach is getting paid anymore. He's not coaching them anymore. He's saying, okay, come over here for a year and we'll see you later. That makes no sense to me. So I understand that the kids want money and they're going to have problems adjusting. I get that. And I get what Pag said about maybe endorsements. I get that. But when you start hurting a game is when I start getting concerned.
Well, fortunately, to turn us back to the Big East a little bit, fortunately, the Big East keeps their kids most of the time.
Yes.
Most of the kids are staying at least 3 years, if not 4. But that was an excellent discussion, and that's why I wanted to bring Matt in since he's early. Those St. John's guys early, man, they're always early. They got to be right. They got to be a step ahead. That's how Louis taught them.
My father, Coach Garnesecca, would be very, very upset with me. And although he's 96, he still packs a punch. And I would not disappoint the family.
Yeah, you told me that you could. That's not allowed. Don't tell me secrets outside the family and all that. I know you told me that Friday, right? So
yeah, it was just a wonderful situation. You know, I'm German Irish, and you know, Lou is all Italian, and he's coming out with these sayings and the pasta, and every colorful adjective you could think of, and I was like, man, this is really great. My mother's going to church saying the rosary, and I'm there, using all this information effectively. It was just a great experience. But I to the point made before, I just want to follow up. I think you're absolutely correct in what these programs have done. And I talked on the show last week. I watch very limited amount of the sports, unless I know a commentator like Mark Jackson is on doing the game, or if my friends are coaches now. We're at that age and beyond.
Total disclaimer: that's another member.
Very startled to see the records of Duke and North Carolina. Never in the history of those schools have they had such horrible records. I mean, you can go back to the 1950s. Well, Duke, in the early started to turn around in the 80s, but North Carolina back to the 50s, they didn't have those terrible records. And I totally agree. I think the risk reward that is much better. It's much for the players if they stay and learn. Because even if you get endorsements and all, and that's a good point too. But again, what's an 18-year-old going to do with endorsement money? They can have an endorsements and they have a continuous check, but as soon as the check hits the mailbox, they're off cashing it, and they don't know any better.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not an insult to anybody. It's just I think they're because their talent is so incredible that it just you assume that their mental capacity is the same, and it's just not.
Yeah. Well, I've got Mike Vaccaro in the waiting room here. I don't want to keep him there forever, so I'm going to bring him into conversation. Pags, I know you got to get ready to go do your show. You're welcome to stay or bomb out whenever you need to.
I'm going to stay for a few more seconds, and if I can.
You bail as soon as you need to. No problem. But let's bring in Mike Vaccaro from the New York Post. Hello, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you tonight?
We've been having a very spirited discussion. We somehow got on the one and done controversy while we're talking about the Big East tournament. But listen, before we go further, I want to congratulate Mike. He's a St. Bonaventure grad. His Bonnies are in the A10 final next weekend, probably in the tournament no matter what. I would say. I don't want to jinx you, but good luck with that.
Yeah, I would think that both St. Bonaventure and VCU are going to get bids. I think they're both playing for seeding next week, and I think the winner will probably maybe get to be a 9 seed, and I think the loser will probably be a 10 or 11, and that's a pretty good place to be, when you're playing for a seed as opposed to having to bite your fingernails all week.
Yeah, so Mike, we've got with me my co-host Mac McGrath from the Mac and Jack Show. I've got Jamie Paggs, the Philly sports guy, who's talked to us about Villanova here tonight. I've got Matt Brust, who you may or may not know is a former St. John's standout back in the mid-'80s, maybe a little before your time at the Post. I think.
But not before my time as a basketball player. I played against Matt many times in the playground. He probably doesn't remember.
Oh, you guys are familiar with each
I
other.
was a guy, a sacrificial lamb. He used to take to the hole and take to school a lot. So,
How many trips to the emergency room did you have to take playing with Matt?
I just had to shake my ego at the door after a couple of days in town.
Well, I formally apologize to anyone.
No need. I learned a
If
big
you had
lesson.
to make
I learned a
a
big lesson in those days that I should probably go to school and be a sports writer.
From Matt Brust, you probably should get some kind of
residuals from that.
Yeah, residual. Right? Thank you. I was looking for the word.
Russ for Long Island Hoops royalty, so it was an honor getting my shot blocked.
Oh, it's very kind, especially when I can jump about an inch. But
Well, Mike, we were talking also about we started out the show talking about Villanova and where they're at with some being a little vulnerable right now, obviously, with the problems they have at point guard. Obviously, they do have the advantage of the coach with the longest tenured coach in the league, but we think it's wide open. I'm not sure. I never got Peg's prediction. What was your prediction for you bug out there, Pegs? Is Villanova going to win?
Well, I do believe that side of the bracket's going to win the tournament. Yeah. And I'd like to see that Villanova makes it to the finals. I think that if they don't, it's going to be them or it's going to be St. John's.
Yeah, not to give away my pick too early and not to kiss up to Matt Brust because I don't want him to elbow me or anything later. I like St. John's to upset Villanova with their guard issues myself. So Mike, you're kind of caught up where we are. What do you see? And I want to get Matt involved in the conversation, obviously, because St. John's has got themselves played back into this conversation about the tournament. They got to win at least they at least have to win that Villa. They got to beat Seton Hall and probably beat Villanova, I think, to get there. Maybe they got to win the whole thing. I'm not sure, but I'd like to get your guys' opinions on that.
I think if they win 2 games, I think they're going to sneak in because that'll mean they will have beaten Villanova. And while Villanova might be damaged right now, they still have it's still going to be a quad 1 win. It's still going to be a win on a neutral floor. It's still going to be a win over a team with a very high net ranking. So I think those 2 wins will probably We'll see. They'll probably be on the line, last 4 in, first 4 out. But I think at the very least, if they win 2 games, it gets them to the play-in game. I really do believe that.
Yeah, Lenardi's got them on the next 4 out right now.
Right. And the draw works out for them because look, they've already beaten Villanova once, and their style of play, when it's clicking, they can honestly beat anybody because nobody's used to playing that kind of style, especially in a year where there's not a lot of practice time. We can't really work against the press. Now, maybe Villanova can spend a little bit of this time, this downtime before they actually play the game. But there's only so much you can do practice to simulate it. They play so differently than everybody else.
Yeah.
And, so it'll be interesting. I mean, and look, I mean, Villanova is vulnerable, and St. John's has played well. I mean, to come back from 18-0 down like they did the other day against Seton Hall and win the game. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen that before, and that tells you about what they can do once they get their press cranking and once they get everybody working on the same page.
Yeah, their defense is phenomenal. Matt, what do you think? I mean, I think that without a point guard, without their point guards, if in fact Moore doesn't play, I think it gives St. John's a huge advantage. What's your thoughts as a St. John's alum?
Well, where my heart lies, but the heart and the head are 2 different things. The difference between this St. John's
very often, but
yeah, understood. The difference between this St. John's club and at the recent past is they have some bigs on the inside. Traditionally, unfortunately, over maybe a decade or so, they've had guys in the mid-range, 6'7", 6'6", playing strong forwards and power forwards, and they're running motion offenses because they don't have big men. So when you have big guys, you have to defend. And St. John's has always gotten great guards, and this year is no exception. So if you have guys that can penetrate and dish off, and the bigs hurt you, then you got to drop down and guard the post. And they kick out, and the St. John's guards are deadly on the perimeter. So I think St. John's has a very good chance. I agree that I think they have to. I think they got to get, if they win 1 game, I would head and heart go with St. John's. However, Villanova's been there; they've been tried and tested. Sometimes you just come together when you're hurt, and you can't forget Connecticut. I mean, UConn is very quietly crept up the ladder here, so I think this is probably one of the most balanced tournaments that we'll see, which equates to a lot of fun for the fans.
For sure. Mac, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just say don't forget about Seton Hall. You still got to get by Seton Hall before you even get to Villanova if Villanova gets. So, I mean, Seton Hall is no pushover. So they'll be tested there first. I think they have a good shot at winning that bracket. St. John's also. I think their bracket because of that is a little bit easier than UConn's bracket right now with Creighton being over there, and Xavier being over there. So I would like to see. I want to see how they play up against Seton Hall first, and if they get by them, I think whoever's next, they got a good shot at winning that bracket.
Yeah, I like St. John's because Seton Hall's been scuffling a lot the last couple of weeks, man. I just don't see them righting the ship right at this point in time, but maybe. You never know. What about the dark horses? Does anybody in this group see a dark horse in here anywhere? Besides the teams we've talked about, out of the top three we've talked about, I guess. Maybe four if we count Seton Hall.
I know. I mean, Xavier struggled the last month. I don't see them in a position to make a run. Creighton is good enough, but they're in such turmoil right now. I mean, who knows? They're kind of a wild card because you just don't know how they're going to respond to the turmoil around them. There have been times this year where I've really liked Seton Hall. This isn't one of those times because they can't get out of their own way right now, and they're coming off one of the most devastating losses you can come up with. To me, I mean, look, in a vacuum, it's either Villanova or it's UConn. But Villanova's down. To me, I think it's UConn's tournament to lose.
Playing great basketball, right? I mean, they've won 5 of the last 6 or 6 of the last 7. I can't remember now. But they're playing very, very well. They've given Danny Hurley an extension now, which them coming back to the Big East, I think, has really added something to what the Big East has been missing something. Well, they're missing a lot of things, obviously, but. From the old Big East, which Matt can speak to, and we'll talk a little bit about. And Mike, you can do that as well. I think UConn returning has really added something to this season, as kind of convoluted as the season's been because of COVID. I think it's brought some more mystique back to the Big East.
Well, it certainly helped UConn too because they were kind of roaming around the wilderness in the American Conference, which is a fine collection of schools that had nothing to do with UConn historically or geographically. I mean, UConn's history is basketball, and unfortunately, it took them giving up a ghost in football to understand that. But football writes the checks for just about anybody who's got a big time football program. Generally, gets led places they don't necessarily want to go, which is why Syracuse and BC are in the ACC. But UConn, for the greater good of basketball fans like us, they were terrible at football and they weren't making any money in football, so they just kind of gave up the ghost there. And that's kind of helped the Big East as a basketball league because UConn makes them a better league and the Big East makes UConn a better program.
Matt, how do you look at when you watch the games, the tournaments, or just the Big East in general today compared to what it was when you were there, when it was just the personalities of the coaches were just off the charts, right? And you had these rivalries, Syracuse and St. John's and Syracuse and Georgetown. And I mean, do you have the same feel at all today as you had then?
It's better. I'd love to see the Big East and ACC 2.0 redo, where everybody goes back to where they came from and where they originated, regardless of – because unfortunately, the catalyst here has been money, and it's literally destroyed these conferences. In those days when we played, people would pack Madison Square Garden. If we played UConn in those days, they were just getting good. It was almost like a night off, but they were just getting good. But the whole rivalry system, Syracuse versus Georgetown, St. John's, Georgetown. I mean, it was so electric. The ACC. I mean, I would have thought that the ACC would have taken a lesson from what happened with the Big East and having Notre Dame come in, and they're all quality schools, but there's a personality that was just everlasting. And the Big East just exploded with personality. John Thompson, incredible coach, just brought so much, fun to the game. And you really were playing more than basketball at that time. It was really for your school. You had wonderful coaches that you had to listen to, and thank God we did, because there was, again, so much was learned. It was like a second college education being around them. And today it's just, I think there are elements that are driving all of college athletics in different directions that have nothing to do with why they were formed, which is why if you go to school, like any other contract, you're fortunate enough to go there. Learn from those coaches. I mean, people get hurt. You're going to get hurt now and again, and it happens. It's inevitable, unless you're Tom Brady, of course. But
don't get me going on Tom Brady.
Yeah, but there was just, even in the old ACC, when my brother played there. As a kid, I'd go to those games, and you literally, as a fan, would be shaking as if you were in the layup lines.
Does anybody else find that? I'm sorry not to interrupt you, Mac, but does anybody else find that ironic that this all happened over football, and the Big East teams that left have done nothing in football, and they've hurt their basketball programs at the same time?
Yeah, but football underwrites a lot of what else happens in athletic departments. I mean, we can be old men yelling at clouds and regretting the fact that the Big East is never going to be a basketball conference again. But I mean, the Big East was formed at a time when those schools that had football, like Pitt, like BC, like Syracuse, were playing independents, and them men playing Penn State and playing Notre Dame. You could actually get by in the football world as an independent, but you can't do that anymore. I mean, Notre Dame is the only one who can do that, and even they couldn't survive a pandemic year without temporarily joining the ACC, and they're kind of an honorary member of the ACC anyway in football. So, I mean, the reality is that football generates too much revenue for schools to ignore it. And unfortunately, look, I mean, UConn's the exception, because UConn tried to build a football program out of the dust, and they saw how hard it was. That's not the same as Syracuse, which has 100 years of football history, and Pitt, which has 100 years of football history, and even BC, which has scuffled, but BC's competitive in the ACC. I mean, it's look. I'm the first guy to go purple prose about what the Big East tournament was like, and take it off from school so you could go to that old quarterfinals, and go into we used to call the Seton Hall Invitational when they play Providence every year in the 8-9 game. I mean, those are great days, and I love those days, and I would love for those days to return. But what you have with the Big East right now is a bunch of basketball prominent programs plus UConn, which is basketball prominent only because it failed so miserably in football.
Yeah, agreed. Jamie or Mac, anything you want to add on that topic?
Well,
Max, I've never seen you quiet so long.
Yeah.
By the way, so go ahead.
I agree.
Try to get Pags in there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I didn't. I
Pags has got to go soon, so I'll.
Yeah, exactly. I have to roll out here.
Jump in. I've never seen him so quiet so long.
Well, you know what? I love listening to the stories. You know what I mean? Like that's the one thing. Like I was not going to ever play college basketball or pro basketball because I couldn't even make a layup. You know what I mean? But I was in awe of the players around that. So watching that and growing up, I like 1985. Villanova winning the championship. I remember being glued to my television, my mother taking me up to Villanova's campus because we were not but 15 minutes away to go and just go watch and be part of the parade and stuff. So remembering the old Big East is a lot of fun for me, because that was kind of what spawned some of my fandom. You know what I mean? 1985, I was a sophomore in high school. You know what I mean? So it's a lot, that's a big change now to see at least Villanova and some of these teams really actually make an impact in the tournament still. Like I feel that even beyond the football, that these teams have kind of come above it. And of course, like you said, you have those teams that left, like Syracuse leaving, Pitt leaving to go for more money because football is where the almighty dollar is. I mean, I can understand that, but I think that the Big East has kind of done well by sticking to its roots of basketball and being able to go forward and move everything forward here. So I love hearing the stories. I'd rather listen to you talk. That's what makes me shut up sometimes. That being said, I'm still rooting for my team over here. Which side am I on? I'm on that side right there. I'm still rooting for my team and to go there. I expect that even if they don't do well in this tournament, that he's going to have them ready for the big dance. And that I wouldn't sleep on them. They're 25. I think they're 250 to 1 shot right now to win the tournament, and that's worth a couple of shekels if you're a betting guy. Because, like I said,
50 to 1, really.
I'm sorry. Maybe it's 25. 25. It was 20 plus 2,500. I don't gamble as much as I used to now. So that's what I'm saying. But it wouldn't be worth. It'd be absolutely worth it to put $100 on it.
Put a buck down for that for sure.
There you go. But listen, guys, I really do appreciate being on the show. I'm sorry I can't stay much longer because I'd love to be able to hear these stories. I have thousands of questions I'd be asking you. So, but thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Pags, thanks for coming on. You always bring a lot to the table. So thank you.
Take care, Pags.
Have a good one, guys.
And then there were 4. Oh, now we got Tom Keegan ready to come in the room too. Before I let Tom in, where did I leave off, Matt? Did you have something you were trying to get in there?
Well, I'm from Connecticut, so I know how bad the UConn program is. It actually loses money, and when they went up to Division 1A, which you have to meet certain qualifications and spend so much money on recruiting and all this stuff to qualify there, it kind of it destroyed their any kind of program that you could say was decent. It destroyed it. And so when they left and they went to the ACC, why UConn did that, I don't know, because UConn was still pretty much independent. And I don't know what caused UConn to leave the Big East. I think the same thing with Boston College. I know they had football a long time ago, but they haven't been relevant in years.
That's not true. They've been good. I mean, they haven't been good they were good last year. They've been good in the last 15 years.
Right.
Brett Ryan played there. I mean, he's
right.
It's a relevant football team, and it's as much as we love basketball, BC is far more of a football school than it is a basketball school.
It's true. And Syracuse, Syracuse at one time dominated football when they had, Jimmy Brown and Joe Morris and all these guys. But, their football program has gone down the pipes for a long time, too. So I think it was a huge mistake.
Yeah, but you're part of the ACC. You're part of a huge multi-million-dollar package that you're not going to be as an independent.
Right.
And so you really, you have no choice. It underwrites everything else in the department. That's what you can't overlook. It's terrible if football compromises basketball. But basketball plays a lot of times in front of 10,000 to 15,000 seat arenas. Football plays in front of 60,000 seat stadiums. I mean, that alone tells you, and the TV appeal. I mean, the TV dollars are, they dwarf what basketball is, and that's why it happens. I mean, it's terrible that it happens. It stinks that it happens. I hate that it happens.
But now what you got is a bad basketball player program and pretty much a bad football program too. So you didn't make any headway. You might have made something off the contract. Boston College played a little bit better last year, but for the most part, they're suffering in both divisions. I just wish, and I understand what you're saying. Football does rule the school, but man, I wish they had the same division as they did.
Well, let me. Speaking of historic programs, let me bring in Tom Keegan. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
Tom, unfortunately, has the do you have your Marquette shirt on there, Mark?
Well, I'm trying to dip down so I'm not biased, but I do.
So, unfortunately, we brought Tom on to talk about the Marquette Warriors and their chances of winning the Big East tournament this year. So,
well, I guess I'm in the minority here. I love the Big East as it's constituted. You can look back. Is it what it used to be? No, but what is in life? I mean, I think the Big East is great. There are a lot of close games, and you've got the one mega power, and then every year there's someone else nipping at their heels. And I love Big East basketball still. I mean, I loved going to the Big East tournament when I was working in New York. Maybe it's not the same now, but I tell you, I've never been to a better college basketball conference tournament than the Big East. That's for sure.
The Big East can have a ninth place team roll down to Chapel Hill and smoke the mighty Tar Heels too.
Actually,
if I got that score right, Keegs.
Marquette does have a good win under their belt. Well,
they have 3 good wins.
Carolina's down here, right? But still a good
North
win.
Carolina's not a good win, but they did beat Creighton and they beat Wisconsin. So
maybe a good one, but it was a satisfying win, right? I guarantee you smiled the entire night when those scores kept rolling in that night.
Well, you're assuming I don't want the coach fired.
Well, I was going to get into that in a minute. Like you were talking about the fans and the electricity in the garden. Let me ask you guys this. I mean, the fact that there's going to be even 2,000 people there, is it going to make a difference for the players in any way, shape, or form and help the local teams at all? You see any
better than having nobody? Yeah, I think it does help. Yeah, why not?
I haven't been back to a Knicks game because they had loud fans there, but I've talked obviously to a bunch of people who have been there, and they say it's remarkable how 2,000 people can simulate a larger crowd. I think it's funny because I started going to Knicks games around 1980 or so, and there were 2,000 people then too, and made a lot of noise. But I think it's even going to be more for look. I mean, college atmospheres are just different than pro atmospheres. So even if it's only 2,000 people, I mean, you're going to have just incredible electric. Especially during these games. These games are always close. These teams are, and it's going to be great for these teams to actually play in front of people besides the custodial staff and the coaches. Yeah, and I think you get to see a better quality of ball because of it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm happy the kids get to play in front of somebody. So, Matt, what about you? I mean, do you think it would have been? You'd never had the experience of playing in an empty gym, I'm assuming. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there were a few late nights on Jamaica Avenue that it was empty, and I heard one voice, which was I was usually in trouble. But playing games for sure, the crowd and the college atmosphere is definitely it takes the wind out of the building. I couldn't imagine what these poor kids have to go through to play in front of 2,000 people. I mean, it's great that there are people there. This is a terrible time. In the state of affairs in this country with this virus. And you just can't help it. You just have to kind of go with what you got. But I don't think it changes the quality of play, but it definitely, it's as a player, it's quite different when you do something well and there's a roar of a crowd because it like spikes your adrenaline and all of a sudden you can do things you didn't think you were capable of. And you definitely feel it as a player.
Yeah. What do you got, Mac?
Well, I think, of course, I agree with what everybody's saying. The college atmosphere, no matter what sport you are, you're representing your school, your fans are there. It gives you some sort of pride and a little bit more than any professional team, I think. I mean, professional sports, you got your fans, but nothing like representing your school and in front of your school and the fans from that school. I mean, it's just a certain type of pride that you get playing college sports that you don't really get in the pros. And I think this will really help the kids. I mean, otherwise, what is it? Just a scrimmage or practice, really? I mean, they're playing another team, but I mean, to have those fans there is going to be tremendous for the kids.
Even from a game watching experience, I think it's different too. I mean, basketball is probably transferred to the COVID era and no fans better than any other sport, I think, just because of the way it's shot. No, I take that back. Football was probably the best, I think, the way it was shot. So having those few fans back will certainly add a lot. Tom, since we brought you in, Pags is gone. The Philly sports guy is gone now. He doesn't give your Marquette Warriors a chance in the first round. I do think Marquette's going to beat Georgetown in the first round myself.
Marquette is playing a little better. Jamal Cain's a senior who should have been playing a lot more in previous years and is playing a lot this year and is justifying the faith in him, the belated faith in him. And he's a really good player, and Theo John is playing the best ball of his career by far. And they have a great freshman, Dawson Garcia, has been outstanding.
Yeah.
So, and DJ Carton is hot and cold. He turns it over like crazy, but he's a freakish athlete, unbelievable leaper. I think they'll beat Georgetown, and with the injuries in the backcourt of Villanova, they'd have a shot there. So they'd be my super dark horse. But the dark horse, the team I actually think that's going to win the Big East tournament and is going to make a lot of noise in the NCAA tournament is UConn.
No.
You know, UConn has one of those teams like when they had Kemba Walker, nobody thought UConn could win the NCAA tournament. They were something like an 8 seed or something. This team, not that they have Kemba Walker, but Book Knight is good, and this Cole is coming on, and their 2 big men I think are good and are coming on. And I really am high on UConn, and sometimes the story wins out. You know, Vac knows we root for the story. And this year, if UConn were to win the Big East tournament in its first year back, that's a great story. And I just feel I'm super high on UConn. And I'll say this, I'm biased by how teams do against Marquette because I watch every Marquette game, so I see each Big East team at least twice. And the one day our cable TV was out was when they were playing UConn. And I live a half mile. I live in Michigan City, Indiana. I live a half mile from a casino. So I walked to the casino to watch the game in the sports book. And UConn was favored by 1.5. And I thought, geez, I think Marquette's going to win this game. And I still thought that when Marquette was up 18 with 16 minutes left and lost by 11 points. So let's just say
That's like new math. I don't know if that's possible.
yeah, exactly. You haven't seen Wojo, but anyways.
No, I have. I empathize.
So I thought this is really impressive, this team, and I've watched them since then. And I'm not saying I was real happy about it, but I was very impressed. I just think teams with guards, I know that's a cliche, but teams with really good guards can make a lot of noise in the tournament. I'm bullish on UConn, and even went back to the casino and put $5 on UConn to win it all.
Just so I can make, I'll put this banner up real quick, just so I can make. I don't know if you guys can see the banner or not, but I've got
Yes.
I've got Butch Lee on my show Friday, so that'll make Tom happy. We're going to revisit 1977. So.
Well, ask Butch when you have him on the show. Say his sophomore year, the year before they won it all, when Indiana was 32-0 that year, and they played in the tournament. And there's a famous picture where all 10 starters you can see at the center jump. Ask Butch if he knows how many of those 10 starters played in the NBA.
Interesting.
You know what the answer is?
No.
10.
All 10?
All 10, plus Bernard Toon off the bench.
Yeah.
For Marquette. And that you don't see that very often. And Earl Tatum had a great game, and nobody else for Marquette really had. Bo Ellis had a decent game, but the rest of them didn't have a good game, and Indiana won. And once they got past Marquette, you had to believe they were going to be undefeated.
Now I'm going to need
ask Butch what would have happened if the 77 NCAA champs had played the 77 NIT champs. That would have been one for the ages.
I was going to say, when Tom said that sports writers root for the story, I know that Mike also roots for St. Bonaventure, though, too. So
yes, he does. And Nick Urzetta, who my brother was high school teammates with, played for that Bonaventure team.
He did play for two of the best in the late 70s, and yeah, I root for great stories. Also, I just to me the best story the best story is always when the bodies win.
Yeah. Well, Bob Lanier, they might have won it all in 1970. Yep. If Bob Lanier hadn't hurt his knee, they had Matt Gant, who supposedly could pick a nickel off the top of the backboard. They had Billy Calball,
yep.
Point guard. And that was a really good Bonnie's team. And who knows, if Lanier hadn't gotten hurt, maybe they'd have won it all. And Vac, you'd have been even more famous today than you are now.
I'd have been even more insufferable. Here's a story I'll share with you guys. So that story that Tom just shared tortures people in Olean and tortures Bonaventure alums of a certain age, obviously, because everybody believes that has a Bonaventure tie that they would have beaten UCLA. They were between Alcindor and Walton, and Lanier was the best player in the country. So one time I was interviewing Coach Wooden. This is maybe 2 or 3 years before he passed, and Tom Coughlin had mentioned that he always thought that Wooden was his hero, but he never met him, but he lived his life by the pyramid of success and so forth. So I was able to actually reach out and get a hold of Coach Wooden, and I asked him about Coughlin and said a lot of nice things. And I said, look, I wouldn't forgive myself, Coach, if I didn't ask you one question. And I said, I went to St. Bonaventure. And he said, oh, I know where this is going. And before I could ask the question, he said, here's what I'll tell you. If we would have played 10 times, they would have beaten us twice. Now, you just never know when those 2 times are going to be.
Great answer.
I think it's a great answer, but that's not enough for a lot of Bonaventure people. Like, we would have been 9 out of 10. And you're both
he's the UCLA coach. He's biased, and you're biased because you're Bonnie's guy.
Exactly.
So you think Bonnie's would have won 8 out of 10. I was a big Bonnie's fan, Niagara fan, Syracuse fan growing up in Rochester until I went to Marquette and saw that that's really nirvana of basketball.
Absolutely.
Mike, could the Bonnies ever move up to the level of the Big East?
Probably not. Look, I mean, they're fortunate right now to be in a prosperous era because they have a really, really good coach.
Yeah.
And hands off that coach, Keegan, if there's an opening.
If I get my way.
Exactly. I mean, it's proof that when you get the right guy to any program can figure it out.
Yeah.
Mark Schmidt's a terrific coach, and that's been helpful. Look, I mean, it's a small school in an obscure location. I mean, they're actually fortunate to be able to compete in the Atlantic 10 because they're going up against schools like St. Louis and Dayton and VCU and Richmond that just have more resources and to crank it up a notch to play in the Big East, that would probably be asking too much. For most of the time that I've been associated with the program, a lot of people were wondering, why can't we drop down to the MAC and be more competitive, which I was always against because the Atlantic 10. Look, I mean, the Atlantic 10 is going to get multiple teams in the tournament this year. You don't get that in the MAC most years.
Oh, that'd be crazy to leave.
Yeah, it'd be nuts. I mean, and the thing is, that's what a lot of people. There's an opening at Fordham now, and so I hear the same things from Fordham graduates. We don't belong in the Atlantic 10. We belong in the MAC. I'm like, you say that until you're in the MAC, and every team in the MAC harbors a secret ambition to get the call from Atlantic 10. There's a reason for that, and it's the same reason why Atlantic 10 teams have always been vulnerable to the Big East because it is a different level.
I've got Siena in my backyard, and I cannot remember a time they got a multiple bids. Maybe one year when Iona was good and lost in the tournament.
I think Siena got one. Now Manhattan got one during Franny Fischel when Franny Fischel was there
at large.
But you got to go 28-3 and losing the conference finals, and even then you're on pins and needles on the last day. So I mean that's the way it is. I mean they're a single bid league, and the Atlantic 10 generally speaking is not.
Yeah. So Tom, Wojo, you want out? I take it from your comments.
Yeah, I mean. Tom Crean, regular season Big East was like a 620 winning percentage. Buzz Williams was like 640. And Wojo is under 500. He's like 45 or something like that. And oh, by the way, this is his 7th year, which means it'll be the 6th year of NCAA tournaments.
Yeah.
0 NCAA victories. Marquette doesn't go that long without an NCAA victory. It just doesn't happen.
Heck, Mike Dean got him to a Sweet 16 for crying out loud.
Yeah, Buzz Williams went Sweet 16, Elite 8. And, if you listen to Wojo interviewed, he never has uttered a single sentence that I haven't heard a million times before from other coaches. So if you're not an original thinker, basketball moves so fast. You've got to be able to adjust on the fly. And I just don't see him doing that. And that's why they tend to win the first time around the league and lose the second time around the league. And
well, he'll probably have a cushy seat next to Coach K waiting for him when he is gone. So,
Coach K, what a shocker that they're not good this year, because when he was saying he thinks that college basketball shouldn't have a season because of COVID, I figured he had a really good team.
So let me, Mike, in case you have to jump here soon, have you given us a winner of the tournament?
Big East?
Oh, Mike.
First time, Mike.
Well, the Big East, yeah. I mean, to me, I agree with Tom. It's UConn's to lose. I think they're playing the best. I think that. Look, if things hadn't happened with Villanova, I think Nova would have been the odds-on favorite, and I would have picked Nova. but I don't even think they're going to survive the St. John's game. As a result, assuming the St. John's survives the Seton Hall game, I guess I should probably put that caveat in there. But I really think UConn right now is playing the best, has the best, probably has the best player left standing, and is on the kind of roll now, where I just think that it's their tournament to lose.
I got to go with St. John's, man. I just think I think their defense is going to just step it up and beat Villanova, and they're going to have a heck of a game against UConn. I just love the kid. Oh gosh, I lost his name now. Who's the guard? No, not Sean. No, the guard. I just lost his name. Help me out, Matt.
What is St. John? Are we talking about?
I'm looking at my cheat sheet.
He's going to be the freshman of the year, and I just lost his name.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, he's really good.
You're talking about Champagne? Is that what you're talking about?
No, not Champagne. The guard, the point guard. Oh God, how terrible is that?
He's really good.
Thank you. I lost. I can't believe I totally lost that.
Alexander's at it.
Yes. Posh Alexander. Jeez, Posh Alexander. Good grief.
Hopefully he can play. I mean, he's been hurting a little bit, so hopefully he can come back. If he comes back, they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah, that's what I'm counting on myself. Mac, jump in here.
Listen, I agree with the guys. I think UConn. I just think their forwards are too good. They got the great freshmen there, and I think that they're with the addition of more coming back, and I just think UConn down low has a big advantage over the rest. And, we can talk about trapping the guards and stuff like that. I just think I like UConn. I think UConn is playing hot right now, and I think they're going to win it. St. John's, I think, is going to win that bracket too. I think it's going to come down to St. John's and UConn. And I just think UConn has got the big forwards underneath that'll win that game.
I'll sign up.
Help Marquette out beating Villanova.
Maybe if you guys hire Schmidt between now and then.
And Keith, Dan Hurley's done an outstanding job bringing that team back from the suspension and out of the dumps. I mean, he got his 200th win, and he's done a heck of a job bringing UConn back from the abyss. I mean, they went south for a few years here, so a lot of credit to him too.
He's done very well. They just gave him an
really is. UConn is a great story right now, coming back to the Big East, and it's just a cool story and a cool team.
That them coming back, we were talking about it before. Them coming back has, I think, been a boon to the league and to them, obviously.
Yeah.
And Danny Hurley just got an extension for his nice work, and so did Randy Edsel, I guess. So the football, he gets thrown a bone since the football team has nothing.
Don't even let me go there, Keith. I don't even go there.
Do you know that Randy Edsel's brother is an NCAA basketball official?
I did not.
Yeah, Duke Edsel, and when Lou Perkins was the AD at Kansas, it was amazing how often that Randy Edsel's brother would be refereeing Kansas basketball games. Lou hired Randy to coach football at UConn.
Well, I hope his brother gives him a call and maybe he can become a referee too.
Mac, it's funny. It's almost like having Jack on the show with Tom's little trivia questions here. Let me ask you guys. We were talking about coaches before too, and I'd asked Pags this question, and Mike and Tom, you've covered the Big East for a long time. Matt, you were a player, not when you were gone, long after Jay Wright started. Do you guys see Jay Wright ever leaving Villanova? He's been he's had offers from the NBA, from the Knicks, the Sixers, probably other teams. I'm sure for a lot of money. You see him leaving ever? I mean, he's going to be 60 years old.
I think Jay's is going to have a statue where the Rocky one used to be, and he's been entrenched in that community. He'll go the way of Rowley without the trip to UNLV, but I think he'll stay. And he's gotten some nice offers. It's a real tough transition. Billy Donovan went through that, and he was a close friend of mine. and just a basketball junkie. And there you see, a guy with a lot of smarts, and you're dealing with guys who are under contract, and it's just a different game. And Jay is a great X's and O's guy, and he's just done a fabulous job with that program. So I really don't see him leaving. And you know what? Hey, who am I to say? If the money's there, you take it, and you do a year or two, and God bless you. But I think he's very comfortable in that community, and there is life after basketball, believe it or not. But
I think at some point he'll take a leap, but I mean, not for a while, and he'll probably have opportunities for the next 5, 6 years, 7 years. At some point, I don't care who you are, you get tired of having to beg 17-year-old kids to come play for you. And when you're as successful as Jay Wright has been, I mean, it's why I'm stunned that Krzyzewski has ended for as long as he has, but he's actually developed almost a different niche for himself, because as the Olympic coach, he's almost like an honorary pro coach. He's like everybody's pro coach, so he's got the best of both worlds. I wasn't surprised when Beeline did it. I wasn't surprised, frankly, when Billy Donovan did it, only because there comes a point where you just want to coach basketball. You don't want to worry about, sending a babysitter coach to make sure a kid goes to class. You don't want to make sure, all the other nonsense that college coaches have to deal with regularly. I mean, if you're able to just spend a lot of money and coach basketball, I could see where the appeal is.
But Mike, to Matt's point, Beeline was a great X's and O's guy too. And yet you have nonsense to deal with when these guys have contracts.
I'm not saying
it's a different type of nonsense, because they won't listen to you the same way. And I think Jay Wright would probably be curious as a retirement job. Do it a couple of years, see what it's like.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Might do that, see what it's like. But I don't know. Jay Wright, to me, is really, really young for his age. So his retirement job could come at 68. I mean, he looks young. He has a young energy. He seems to be a legitimately great guy. Even referees like him. Nick Urzetta's uncle, Carmen Urzetta, was a D1 ref. I said, who's the nicest big-time coach? He said, Jay Wright, hands down.
Well, I think Mac also said the right thing. I mean, he's got a life beyond basketball, and there's no law that says that he can't just shut it down in 5 years and say, I'm just going to hit golf balls and look at the ocean for a while. I mean,
that's what I do.
He certainly do it, and more power to him if he's able to do that, because I think he'll probably be a lot happier.
Tom was right. He does look young for his age. We were watching a Villanova game the other day, and my wife could not believe it when I told her that guy's only a year younger than me. And she said,
"You going to say he's better looking than you?"
I don't know what she was trying to tell me, but I was very, very hurt. All I can tell.
Because you're a realistic guy.
I don't even know where to go with that, Keith. So I'm just going to be quiet.
That's kind of like me taking the ball to the basket against Brust.
Now I'm hurt again, Mike. Thank you very much. My self-esteem can't take much more of this. I'm telling you right now.
Boy, no love for Marquette in this tournament. I'm feeling no love in this room.
I've got them beating Georgetown.
Big deal. There's a matchup of coaching titans.
Listen, I have to tell you, I do have some.
I've been saying that to Patrick.
I told Matt when I had him on the show when I was younger, I was a big Marquette fan, and I think I told you this, Tom, when I was in my teens, I loved watching those teams with Al McGuire and the Butch Lee championship team, and I had some more ties to him later on because Mike Dean from Siena here, who did a great job at Siena, got the job there and did well for a few years.
Good coach, bad recruiter.
If Butch has an extra week of eligibility, I give him a better shot.
So guys, a real quick question for you. The old Big East, the new Big East. Who do you think is the best Big East coach in the history of the Big East? The best.
Good question, Mac.
The best head coach in Big East history.
Probably John Thompson.
I would go with Jim
Calhoun.
I would say Calhoun because the program he inherited was a mess, and he only won multiple championships with that program along the way, and probably could have won more.
Yeah.
I know he wasn't necessarily the best copy, and he wasn't the warmest soul, but man,
maybe the coldest.
that guy could coach. And,
yes, he probably would be number one, and then John Thompson number two.
Matt,
No,
you have a vote.
I'd like to vote on that.
You can't vote.
I think what you have to remember, and you've been talking about the recruiting process with these coaches. I would have to say, and I'm going to stay at home with this with Lou Carnesecca, solely because as we had talked about in the last show, once I was recruited by Carolina. My brother played there, a beautiful campus. Yes, no 18-year-old is going to say no to that. When St. John's came in, most of my family's from that area. It's a little scary, but it was a cement block in the middle of Queens, and the man won for 40 years. And with the pressure of the New York press, he had nothing to sell but his character and who he was and what he believed in. I think it was in most coaches, and then you can see it in the past, in the history of the past 20 years or 30 years since he retired in 92. You got to get players, and you got to get them to play and believe in what you're doing. And he had absolutely nothing to sell. And I just think there's more to than just X's and O's. That's the end game. You're looking at campuses. There's campus life. There was none at St. John's. Our campus life was the 6 train going into Manhattan, and we weren't even allowed to do that.
What about the salty dog?
So I have to go with Lou Carnesecca in a very unbiased way. I played he and Dean Smith. And Dean was a wonderful X's and O's coach, but and with all due respect, I'm not sure how well Dean would do with the New York media or being in a place like St. John's. It just you have to really the press corps is daunting, and the pressure to win there is just unbelievable. And he took a program from Joe Lapchick way back when, and Lou was originally a baseball guy. So there are just so many aspects to the game and these schools themselves that the end result is the game, is the final game. There's so much buildup that goes to that, and I have to take my hat off to Coach Carnesecca, because there was none. Of all the coaches that I've ever even seen, well, he may not have the titles, but boy, was he is an incredible human being. He still at 96 talks to all his players, looks out for them. I mean, it just, there are so many intangibles that unfortunately get looked over in today's age, but
that's awesome.
I can't say enough about him.
Well, I'll never overlook him, because he wasn't just a great coach. He was a good man. And I'll leave you with this anecdote, which kind of brings it full school to the entirety of my horrible basketball career. But when I first got the job at the Post, I went over and introduced myself to Coach, and he was retired by then, but obviously still very, very active. And I just wanted to say hello. And they said, Coach, I go all the way back. I was a camper at your basketball camp years ago. I said, I wasn't very good. And he said, "Now I know if you were, I would remember your name." But he said it in such a way I wanted to hug him. I thought it was the greatest thing I ever heard. I looked at the story. And the fact is, he would have, right? So
yeah, absolutely. That's an honest guy. And you mentioned North Carolina gets to recruit to that beautiful campus. Well, Al McGuire, and I forget who the player was, but he was at Belmont Abbey. Al was. And he got some great player out in New York, and he's with 2 assistants from Big East type schools. And they said, "How the heck did you get that guy? What reason did he give for going?" He said he loved the campus. What are you talking about? I've been to Belmont Abbey. It's a postage stamp. Didn't show him Belmont Abbey. Showed him Chapel Hill.
Thank you for emphasizing the point.
Mac, your question and in turn their answers now have killed my recruiting process for my show, because I've been telling Bill Rafferty, I've been trying to get him on the show, that he's the best Big East coach of all time.
He knows you're lying.
Yeah, you shot your credibility. He'll never come on.
I think he knows I'm kidding. I hope so.
Another great Big East coach, but it's just that he wasn't, didn't spend a ton of time in the Big East was Rick Pitino.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
One of the great basketball coaches of all time.
Yeah, what he did in Providence is pretty epic, and you kind of forget what he did in Providence, given what he did afterward. But those 2 years in Providence, I mean, he took a team that was garbage, and he took them to the Final Four in 2 years. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to weigh in here. I want to give a plug to PJ Carlissimo because I'll tell you what a great guy. I had the privilege of playing with him with the Big East All Stars, and we went to Australia. And my roommate was Mark Polanski, and we had all these guys. But just a great X's and O's guy, and what he did with that Seton Hall program and the kids he brought in. Seton Hall was very similar to St. John's in terms of aesthetics, but he had a very, very dynamic personality, and he used every bit of all the tools that he had to get players, and he did get players there for a while, and that was a tough place to get players to come to too.
Yeah, and again, another guy went to the NBA, and it just wasn't the same.
Yeah. Did good job with the Knicks before he actually went, back to college. But
yeah, I just think a lot of
Mac.
What's that?
You didn't give an answer. Who's your answer?
Well, I posed the question. I'm being neutral. You know what I mean? So I really believe that a lot of college, no matter what sport it is, that when they go on to the pros, it's such a hard transformation because you're dealing with, men with contracts, with agents, with front offices. When you're the head coach at any school in any program, you're pretty much the king of the castle there. And you're the recruiting, you're talking to the players, you're the cheerleader, you're the mentor, you're the social worker, you're everything when college. But when you move to the pros, it's very hard to adjust, man. It's hard to let go of those things and become a businessman and just stay in your lane. It's very tough, and that's why a lot of college coaches don't succeed on the pro level.
Al McGuire's answer to the question, would you ever coach in the NBA? He said, I'll coach in the NBA if the owner pays me $1 more per year than the highest paid player on the team is making.
There you go.
And he knew that would never be the case. So, but if you're not the highest paid, his point was they're not going to listen to you.
Was Al McGuire not offered? I read this on the one of the Marquette groups I belong to, and you probably do too. I think if there's an Al McGuire Wit and Wisdom group or something. Tom, you might belong to it.
Yeah, I do. He was offered the Notre Dame job once.
There was an article posted recently that he was offered, or he had accepted the Milwaukee Bucks job before Larry Costello did, to be the GM and a coach in Milwaukee Bucks when they were an expansion team. Oh. He obviously didn't take the job. Maybe I don't know if that's a true story or not, or anybody else.
I don't think I've ever heard that story, or I repressed it.
Yeah, you may have repressed it. Go back in the group and look back through the post. It was only last week, I think. So.
Yeah, I will. That's interesting.
It was something I'd never heard before.
I have to jump, guys. This has been fun.
Mike, thanks for coming on as always. I love having you on. You always bring a lot to the table, as Pags does, and all you guys. So thanks for coming in, Mike.
It's great talking to you guys.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Take care.
Go Mark.
There you go.
Well, Tom, I'm glad that we've kind of been jumbled tonight. My whole lineup got screwy because the St. John's guy, who Louis Carnesecca made show up an hour early for practice, showed up an hour early for the show. But it's kind of worked out. It's kind of worked out. We've had a nice little round table going. So you guys can feel free to stay. We got Nate and we got the Safety and the Sports Writer coming on from the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, the same network that TGI Sports Talk is on, and the Mac and Jack sports show is on. They'll be coming on at 8:30, and they'll be talking more about UConn. You guys are welcome to stick around, and if you don't want to, that's fine. But it's been a great hour, I guess we've had you. Matt, you've been with us since the beginning, but
it's been a blast so far. I mean,
so before they come in, is anybody, Matt, anything you want to throw out there that you haven't been able to get in?
No, not really. I mean, I think you're taking it right down the right path, Keith. I mean, this is a prelude to the NCAA tournament, and we already got Villanova's already in there, and we may get maybe 2, maybe 3 more teams in there, depending on how they do in a tournament and what it looks like at large. I'm not sure. I don't know about you guys. I think that Villanova, of course, is going to get in because they won the Big East. You got Creighton, who should get in there. I think they're going to get in there. And then you got UConn and maybe St. John's. I read somewhere where Xavier's on the bubble, but I think that's a pretty big bubble. I don't know if they'll get in or not. But I really think that if it goes the way it looks to me, and what do I know? You're going to have UConn and St. John's probably getting in too if they make the championship, and Creighton, of course, they're already in from what I understand. So
why wouldn't UConn already be in?
I think UConn's in.
What I just read, guys, is that they got so many votes. I think it was 532 votes, but they weren't a shoe-in yet. And let me see if I got it right. They're not even. Well, let's put it this way. This is what they said in the top 25 right now. You've got Villanova and Creighton, so I figure they're both going to come in. But UConn didn't break the top 25, the bubble teams right now they were saying was Xavier and St. John's. I agree with St. John's. I think UConn's in too. I really believe that too. But so I think you got what, 4 teams that should make it from the Big East.
Joe Lunardi, who does the best bracketology of anybody. I think he might have invented it, to be honest with you.
Bad wig, though.
He's got them in. Well, are there good wigs?
No.
No, there aren't. He's got him a 9 seed right now. So, so again, I agree. I think if St. John's gets to the final, I think they get in.
St. John's is going to have to run the table. They
need to win.
Yeah, and I think they got a special unit. I think Mike Anderson has done a wonderful job. I don't think anybody expected him to come in. I didn't know Mike before, but he's done a superb job, and I think he's got them all running in the right direction. And this Big East is very competitive. Anybody can come out of nowhere and surprise you, and it's going to be who's got the legs at the end. That's always the way in tournament play. It's not necessarily the best team, but if you've got the legs, and it's just like a prize fight. I'm saying 15 rounds. I'm dating myself, but it's a 12-round fight, and sometimes the best teams run out of gas. You got injuries. We talked about Villanova and their injuries and things that have held them back. But St. John's, they're going to be a tough out. Let's put it that way. They're going to be a tough team to beat. They'll be fighting every night.
We talked about
those 15-round fights, 3 minutes a round, where you're out there slugging at each other. 12 isn't even amazing, but back when they had 15 and Ali and Frazier would be going for 15 rounds. Jeez.
Wonderful time, wasn't it?
It was great for us watching. Yeah.
Matt goes 3 minute, 15 rounds, 3 minute 15 rounds with his partner, Jack Hirsch, every Wednesday through Saturday or Sunday. Excuse me.
And you're undefeated.
And Jack's a boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association.
Right.
So we know a little bit about boxing. Hey, guys, if you go back even a little further, they fought till somebody was totally knocked out. So, I mean, it was even more barbaric years ago. So even
Jack Johnson and gentlemen.
That's what happened to Jack. Now I know what happened to Jack.
Yes, exactly. So,
Jack, if you're listening, I'm only kidding, by the way. I love you.
One question for y'all. How do you think the Big East stacks up against the other conferences? I mean, you got, I've been watching some of the games of, out west, the ACC. I've been watching some of the different conferences. They got some really good teams out there, and they got some teams that used to be really good and aren't playing so good now, and some that were even affected by the COVID more than others. So what do you think the Big East matches up with the other conferences when it comes down to the NCAA?
Well, I think the Big Ten is probably the best conference. Big 12 is tough. Who's a sleeper team? They're not real physical to go with the stereotype of the West Coast team, but talented team is USC.
Yeah.
I talked about them 2 weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, the program is really kind of quietly rebuilt itself nicely.
What do you think?
With Mike Anderson, who would have thought that he'd do it right away, be this good? And I think that's is really exciting for St. John's.
I know everybody just say Danny Hurley did a great job, and Jay Wright does a great job year after year. But I think Mike Anderson is the coach of the year in that conference because they've exceeded expectations more than those other guys in my mind. But we'll see. Wednesday, I think they announced that. So I'm going to bring Big Joe in from the safety and the sports writer. I was going to try to wait for Nate to come in. Hello, Joe. How are you?
How you doing? I just sent you a message. March 8th is the anniversary of Ali Frazier won.
Yeah, I heard
you guys talk about boxing, so I had to chime in on that one.
Yeah, since you're with the Northeast Streaming Sports, I know you knew that we did a big special anniversary of the Ali Frazier fight yesterday, right, Joe?
I missed it yesterday. I'm sorry, I was on the road, but it's a great subject, and it was probably the greatest boxing match of all time.
Well, if you get a chance, Joe, go check it out because
I will.
We had some of the biggest names in boxing. In fact, a fighter from the undercard of the Ali Frazier show event was there, Paul Simeonetti, who won that fight during the Ali Frazier event. So we had experts plus actually a fighter from the Ali.
Oh, there he is.
That's big time.
Sorry, guys. Nate, sorry about that.
That's all right. My internet has been spooky all evening, so I apologize. I had to reboot, and then I couldn't get it to come back on. I'm like, oh, great. This reboot was a fantastic idea.
Well, I didn't see. I had to scroll down to let you in, so I apologize for that.
You're good. It's great to see you.
Good to see you guys. For Matt and Tom and our audience, we have with us now Big Joe and Knoxville Nate from the Safety and the Sports Writer. Also on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, as Max said earlier. I know you guys are, I don't know if it's both of you, are UConn supporters or followers?
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, so yeah, I mean, you have to support UConn when you come from Connecticut. I'm glad to see that Danny Hurley got him back on the right track, but we were just talking on our show a little bit, kind of sentimentality, but you guys were talking about Mike Anderson down in St. John's. It would be nice to see St. John's do something, because I go back to the Chris Mullins era, and when it was great to see St. John's when he used to play at the Garden and have those Saturday afternoon games at the Garden, maybe get college basketball back into the Garden again, because we surely do miss it around here. And I'm definitely rooting for UConn and St. John's in this tournament, so we'll see which one of those could survive.
I'll let you and Nate know, Joe. If you don't know Matt Brust, he is a former St. John's standout, played for Louis Carnesecca in the mid-'80s on some very good St. John's team.
Yeah, well, I remember the name for sure.
Very physical.
What?
A very physical player is what they like to call dirty players.
Everybody says the same thing. I don't get it.
Well, you needed that against Georgetown.
Well,
I mean, you needed somebody go out there and take on those guys, man. Otherwise, they'll knock you into the second deck.
Well, if you're going to get called for a foul hard so it's not a 3-point play.
Yeah. If you're going to foul them, you might as well keep the ball out of the hoop. That's
get your money worth. I mean, that's what basketball. That's when college basketball took off. I mean, if you talk about ESPN and everything, it was built on the back of college basketball in the Big East, and the Big East brought physical, rough play every night and passion that we sorely miss today. It's defense, grinding it out, and I'm sorry, it just doesn't seem like the same game sometimes.
I got to tell you guys, and Matt, I want you to weigh in, obviously too, and all of you. But again, I had Tony Red Bruin and Eric Santafer from ex-Syracuse standouts on Friday. And they were part of the original freshman class of the Big East, 1980 or 1979-80. And I had mentioned to them, and Eric actually kind of went that way too. I mean, everybody talks about Magic and Bird, right? Michigan State against
Indiana State.
Indiana State, thank you. And that was what really started March Madness going crazy and really college basketball booming. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think it's not a coincidence that the Big East formed at the very same time and basketball in the East just exploded. And you had all of these, as Matt and I have talked about, we've all talked about all these superstar coaches, these huge personalities. And I think that was huge for college basketball at that time.
You can't belittle anything that Dave Gavitt did around the Big East.
Yeah.
He kind of brought he actually grew college basketball. I mean, college basketball always had a nice following and everything, but now, I mean, we talk about conference tournaments. When you talked about the Garden and the Big East tournament, I remember people renting suites for the 4 days to stay in there and try and go to every game. And the tickets were the hottest tickets in town. And every night, the matchups, you could just talk about the players you saw, the coaches you saw. I mean, Rick Pitino against John Thompson, Louis against, Jim Boeheim. I mean, it was Raleigh Massimino. Watching the coaches on the sidelines was half as fun as watching the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And
I can remember
the
Thompson and was it Rick Pitino? Who was Thompson in nose to nose with one year? Was it Rick Pitino or was it Rick Barnes? Can't remember.
Well, my challenge to Nate, and I threw it down to him last week, and he hasn't come through yet. He's big on getting the sports memorabilia and his shirts and everything. I want him to come on our show one night with a Louis Carnesecca sweater.
Maybe we can hook him up, Matt.
I can do that, man. I'm a game worn guru, so I have not seen that one on the auction block. Throughout the auction houses that I've been purchasing things from, but somebody may just be holding that one out.
Well, the
Hey,
style's
Nate-
coming back, I heard, so you might be able to grab one.
Hey, Nate, you're down there in Tennessee, if I'm correct, right?
That is correct. I am. I'm in Knoxville, right at the University of Tennessee, right now.
So if you're following the Big East, right? Because I know I'm from Connecticut. Big Joe's from Connecticut. We got a St. John on here. We got a Marquette. But if you were to pick a team in the Big East, I mean, if you had to say this is it, who do you think is going to win this thing? I mean, Villanova's hurt a little bit. You got the second seed's kind of in turmoil, and then you got UConn who's playing hot right now, and the St. John who's playing hot right now. Do you see that becoming a championship?
I don't know. I'm hoping so. I was always a St. John's fan when I was growing up. I've got a lot of family in New York, and I was always a St. John's fan when I was younger. And I'm hoping, I'm cheering for St. John's to win it. But if you had to put me on the spot, I'm actually, as we talked about in our show last hour, I picked Creighton, and who was the other one I picked? I picked Creighton. And I'm kind of worrying about Villanova with these injuries starting to pile up. I like Jay Wright. I've always trusted in him as a coach, and I like them as a team. But, losing two starters when you're going into tournament time, I think is going to be rough. So I'm guessing Creighton, even though they're, still having some issues with the coach, obviously, I'm still feeling like they've got a chance. And then obviously I'm hoping that St. John's can do it. So those are my two kind of dark horses, so to speak.
You don't think that distraction is going to hurt Creighton here in this tournament, Nate?
I mean, it could, but it's also something that maybe, that they can rally around. The coach is gone. Let's put that out of mind.
They reinstated him today, by the way.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then it may not be good, but I think sometimes when you get out on the basketball court, you focus on that and you try and put other things that bother you or that are going on in your life. I know when I played football, that's what I did. I put stuff to the side and just focused on the game. And sometimes that can happen. It may not, but I've seen stranger things.
Well, I think personally, it's not going to be a big issue because the press and everything is not going to be like a regular year where they have to answer the 50 questions every time they're in practice and everything else. They're going to be able to control the amount of questions, and probably McDermott will say one statement, they'll get away over it because the press won't have the access they've had in past years where they ask every player the same question over and over again and create the distraction with it. And plus, without fans and the disrupted signs and stuff like that, all the fans that would have been throwing up signs and the chance, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal.
You're probably right. So who you got? We got Nate's winner. I'm guessing you're like UConn.
I'm rooting. I tell you, I'm rooting for St. John's just because it's been so long. And I mean, I go back to Louis Carnesecca, Mullins, and those guys, and it would be special to have it's kind of their hometown, their home team, and they haven't had a chance to dominate in a long time. I'm worried a little bit about, I don't know, teams like Providence maybe doing an upset on somebody, but I would say the top teams are going to get through. And right now, I'm leaning towards St. John's. Villanova. What worries me is that your backcourt. It's so much guard play come tournament time, and to lose two big guards like that going into the tournament, that's huge.
Yeah, we talked about that early on, that the fact that I'd give St. John's a very good chance over Villanova is because of the guard issues with Villanova and the pressure that St. John's throws at you all night long is going to be a problem, I think, for them.
I don't think Villanova will make it that far.
That's right. We forgot Tom has them losing to Marquette in the
there you go.
I don't know if the quarterfinals, we'll call that. So
There you
it
are.
can happen. And look at, you know what? You get some good guard play. You know how guards get hot in these tournaments, and
It's one game. It's one game, guys. It ain't best 2 out of 3. I mean, if he has an off night, anything can happen. Anything can happen.
4 out of 3 would be amazing.
well, you could win the whole tournament and go to the big dance, Tom. Who knows?
No, but I think UConn could win it all. That's my wild pick. By win it all, I mean the NCAA tournament.
How about the fact that none of these teams have played a full schedule this year? Usually, in this time of year, they'd have 30, 35 games in the bank, some of them. And you got guys, freshmen, who are just getting to their 20th game or their 21st game, and now it's tournament in the spotlight. How is that going to affect what the tournament looks like?
That's why I think an outlier could win it. Someone from way out in left field like UConn could win it all, I think.
Well, let me ask you guys. UConn had a fairly lengthy shutdown, as a lot of teams did a while back. Do you think that in some way that helped them and gave them some fresh legs to make this run that they're making now?
The fewer games you play, the less chance there is you have a significant injury, for one thing.
Yeah.
And maybe their legs won't give out and when other teams are.
Yeah, everybody. It's been affecting everybody a little bit differently. Some teams, have had games postponed. They've had games canceled, and they've struggled, with breaks. But then we were talking about in our show last hour. Michigan had a complete shutdown for 10 days or more, and it didn't seem to affect them at all. They came back and were still rolling, and as much as it made
last week or so.
Yeah, as much as it made me throw up, they still seem to be, balling pretty good. So it's weird. It's just a weird, strange season. And with so many blue blood teams struggling and not being around, I'm with him. I think it's a possibility that somebody that we're not thinking about could pull it off.
And Juwan Howard could be the national coach of the year. He's a cool story.
It's a great story. He was belittled for that. They were belittled for that hiring pretty much. Weren't they?
Last word.
Yeah, they got rid of a guy that was proven and brought in a guy that had never really been a head man at a university before. And I just mentioned that in our show was that I have to give him credit. Not only did he put together a pretty good team, but he's done a heck of a job coaching this year.
And when you think he's got a great recruiting class coming in too, from what I've read as well. So.
He does next year, yeah.
And it really is an anomaly when you look at Patrick Ewing's struggles at Georgetown, Chris Mullins struggling at his alma mater at St. John's. For a guy to go back and be able to, reclaim his glory as a bench coach, I mean, that says a lot. I mean, we were trying to figure out what he's doing differently that someone like Patrick Ewing hasn't been able to do down in Georgetown. You would think the Ewing name could bring the at least some recruits in.
Well, I think either you're a great communicator, which is what a teacher is, or you're not. And, whether it's in school or a golf pro or a basketball coach, if you're really good at communicating and instilling athletes with confidence, which Juwan Howard clearly is good at instilling athletes with confidence.
Yeah.
They play very confident, and he's just a really strong personality, and you can tell he's a good guy. And it'd be cool if he just ends up being a dominant college coach and has no interest in ever going to the NBA.
Yeah. Well, he was on to, teams that went in deep tournament runs when he played at Michigan. And then he was on NBA championship teams when he was playing with the Heat. So he's seen what it takes to win. And obviously he's been able to, take some of that and translate into coaching the boys.
And he's a Chicago kid, so he'll recruit Chicago well.
Yeah. That's always good.
Guys, I'm going to jump off. I think it's been a pleasure talking to you all, and
Likewise.
let's go St. John's and Marquette.
There you go.
Great
Thanks
job.
for coming. Thanks for coming, Matt, as always. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'll take
Yeah.
off too. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Okay, Tom, thanks for coming, and we're going to root for Marquette against Villanova, I guarantee you.
Hey,
I'm
Tom.
an Al McGuire fan.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
Tom, nice meeting you. Pleasure meeting you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
See you, Tom.
So, guys, let me to get back to UConn for a second. I mean, obviously, we talked earlier before you guys were on that, it was really a big move for both the Big East and UConn, both returning to the Big East this year.
Yeah.
It benefited both sides. And Danny Hurley, as Mac has said, has done a tremendous job rejuvenating that program, because Oliver left it kind of in a mess after one good run in the NCAAs. But and Hurley's got an extension. What's the future look like in UConn past this year?
Well, I think it's a very good future. I mean, the thing I love about Hurley is he's done his groundwork. Rhode Island, he didn't just get presented this gem of a job.
Wagner,
like Calhoun when he came here. He came from where he had to set up other universities, turn them around. He did a nice job in Rhode Island, setting himself up for this. His father, I mean, you talk about a coach, a legendary coach. I mean, he's got everything going for him, except the fact that his father's not coaching anymore. We could have stolen some of his talent out of high school,
right?
But no, I don't think there's any limit to what they could do. I think they could get all the way back to where they were, and we need it around here. The thing is that, like I was telling Nate, I mean, it was their second home venue when they played at the Garden. You saw as many Connecticut people there as you saw New York people or any other place. So it would be nice to have them, reinvent themselves and come into the Garden. But I don't see any reason why they can't just do it again. I mean, the groundwork is already there. It worked once. And as they always say, the hardest part is the guy following the legend. Well, he's a little years past when Calhoun left, so it's not as hard as it was with Nolly.
That helps.
Yeah. No, as an outsider looking in, I was just excited to see them going back to the Big East, because I was pretty upset when the Big East was, somewhat dismantled, when Syracuse left and Boston College and those teams. I mean, as a kid who loved college basketball and feared change, that broke my heart seeing them bust that conference up. And I think, like you said, it's a win-win for both of them. Having them go back, I think it helps them. Being back in the Big East, I think it helps the conference, and I think it'll help Hurley with recruiting.
Yeah, we had a long discussion on the breakup of the Big East earlier, and it's a very sad. It's ironic, and I'll get your guys' take, because I find it ironic that football caused this entire thing.
Yeah.
And these schools left because of their football programs, and their football programs are terrible.
Yeah.
And the move has hurt the basketball teams as well.
Yeah.
Syracuse has not been Syracuse of what they've been historically since they've been in the ACC.
Supposedly they were this close to get, when Paterno was Paterno and Penn State was Penn State, to getting Penn State to join the Big East. That probably would have kept BC in line. That would have kept Syracuse in line. It would have kept Pittsburgh in line.
Yeah.
It would have made the whole conference would have been different. But the little schools, Villanova, Georgetown, and those guys couldn't figure out, like any good Catholic, how to get in on the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get it. They make this whole move based upon football reasons, and none of those teams have competed in the ACC since they've gotten there. And, it's basically a one-man show down there, with Clemson winning the conference every single year. So it's like, why did we ruin this beautiful basketball conference for a bunch of teams to get their butts kicked playing football down there? It just made no sense to me, and it still doesn't.
Well, like we talked about earlier, football pays for the majority of the programs. UConn's a different story. UConn loses money, and I don't even want to go there right now. But when you have an offer to go to a bigger conference and maybe make more money, and the football program basically is paying for your basketball program, it's hard to turn it down. It's a shame, because the Big East to me was, I would say probably the most powerful college basketball conference at one time in the country. And I could put it up against any of the other conferences.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and it's a shame that happened. But when you move up to bigger conferences, as you know, Joe, I mean, it doesn't mean that your team's going to get better.
Let's put the money on the table. It's right here on my chest right now. Notre Dame they used the Big East to support their basketball programs, women and men. But they wouldn't come and join and bring their football money in. If they had brought the football money into the Big East, just like Penn State would have done at that time, they would have kept the BCs, they would have kept Syracuse, they would have kept Pittsburgh, at that time you had West Virginia, you had Miami in the league, you had Virginia Tech, you would have kept all those guys there.
That would have been a great conference.
It would have been a great conference. But Notre Dame, no. Our football money is our money. You can't have any of that. So I mean, that was one of the worst things. And I grew up a Notre Dame fan. I'm always going to be a Notre Dame fan, but I know they stand on clay feet sometimes. And they owed. I mean, they would not have the women's program they have without UConn.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%. And I'm a Notre Dame fan too. And I agree with you 100% there. So
I forgot who we got. You got St. John's, you said, right, Joe?
St. John's, I'm rooting for them. I mean, I'm looking Villanova. Like I said, if Villanova's healthy, I think they go wall to wall. I wouldn't be surprised if Seton Hall or Providence pull something kind of up. But I'm thinking St. John's. I really am. I think St. John's is sitting there ready to do something.
Yeah, I think Providence. I know they beat a shorthanded team there the other night against Villanova, but they've got two guys that can score with Duke and Watson, both averaging over 16 points. It's always helpful to have two guys in tournament play that can fill it up, because you may have a guy one night that can't hit it.
Yeah, they've got the worst team in the league in round one here, so they're going to see UConn in round two.
Right.
Puncher's chance for Providence or no?
Well, yeah, I think they have great coaching, or good coaching, at least, if you don't want to say great coaching. But, I mean, he does a good job up there. And, yeah, there's a little bit of a rivalry between Providence and UConn. They're two schools in pretty good close proximity. They usually get a good game out of it. And, UConn, as much as we can say their pedigree and everything else, none of these guys have done either. Danny Hurley's bringing this team in for the first time where they have a chance to do something. And that's the whole thing when we talked about the 20 games. And, yeah, it's great that all these guys have fresh legs, but they don't have the experience coming in. They don't have, as Nate brought up, those preseason tournaments, the Alaskan shootout and stuff that everybody has all over the place. Yeah. Those tournaments seem unimportant because they're in November, but it's a wetting of the feet for those freshmen and sophomore about what college tournament play is like.
Yeah, those big games out of conference that they do to start the season. A lot of those didn't happen, and I think that some of the play has been affected by that, because it's a nice measuring stick to play against somebody at the beginning of the year. Even if you lose, you can learn a lot about your team and fix problems if need be.
Great point.
Hey, guys, I think a lot has to do with who the hottest team is, as not so much as the best as in any sport. And I'm telling you right now, I think UConn's forwards, Sanago and Whaley, I mean, these guys are playing unbelievable basketball right now. They just got their guard back. I'm telling you, I think they have a legitimate shot, as one of the other guests said, at taking this to the house, and I mean all the way. And I don't know. I hear a lot of St. John's here, but I don't know, even with their pressure defense, if they can stop them big boys under the basket. I don't know.
Well, it'll be a fun matchup when we get to St. John's and UConn on Saturday night, I think. So
it would feel like old times, except I wasn't there.
It would. I agree. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you coming on with us tonight.
Hey, thank you.
We wish you luck on your show as well. I know you moved to Monday nights, I think now. Steve,
yeah,
told me, so
Mondays and Thursdays. Hey, we got to figure out. We should get together off the air and come up with some kind of a bracket challenge.
Sure.
Yeah,
we also do our brackets and see who between all the shows who comes up with the best bracket.
That would be it. Me too.
All right.
I would love to do that.
All right, guys, thanks for stopping, and we're going to wrap it up. And good luck to St. John's. Good luck to Connecticut. Good luck to Nate. Who do you root for anyway? Tennessee?
Tennessee and Duke in basketball. My dad went to Duke, and I grew up, I'm from Ohio originally, but I grew up down here in Tennessee and went to high school down here. So I cheer for the Vols and the Blue Devils. And since the Blue Devils suck, I'm going with the Vols. Yeah, and Tennessee's actually been pretty up and down this year too. I mean, we've struggled since the SEC started playing, and but we won yesterday and took down Florida pretty big, and maybe we can pull it together. Who knows?
You never know who's going to get hot in March, so anybody can win.
Hey, we got two really good freshmen in Jaden Springer and Keon Johnson. They were two McDonald's All-Americans, and they quickly have become our two best players.
Excellent. Well, good luck, guys. Thanks a lot. Let's do that.
Thank you for having us. We'll crack a challenge. Talk to you later.
All right, see you, Keith. See you, Mac. Thank you, guys.
Take it easy.
All right, Max. So that's what we got. It looks like you and I are going to go head-to-head in the final. St. John's against UConn.
It'll be fun. And you know something, I wouldn't mind if St. John's won it, but I'm going for UConn. I got it.
Well, we'll kind of see. We'll have a good idea where we're heading come Friday when we talk, I think. So
no doubt. It's not going to be anything. Hey, Keith, anything can happen. It's one game, man. So anything.
Listen, I think we had a good time tonight. I appreciate you coming on with me and co-hosting tonight. Even though, I know you're used to Jack carrying you, but you did, I'm glad to see you come on tonight. So
I had a blast, Keith. I appreciate it.
Let's wrap it up. I'm going to wrap it up. It's Keith Engle with TGI Sports Talk, Mac McGrath from Mac and Jack Sports, all on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube. Go subscribe on YouTube. We need those followers. Let's go, guys. Have a great week. Bye-bye.